Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we do another deep dive into Tubi. And with that, let's get to the list.
I don't want to be remembered as a douchebag.
Somebody help me!
Deadstream is a 2022 found footage horror movie, written and directed by Joseph and Vanessa Winter. It also stars Joseph Winter and Milani Stone. A disgraced internet personality tries to win back his followers by live streaming himself at an abandoned haunted house, but he accidentally unleashes a vengeful spirit.
This is the most haunted house in the United States. Death Manor was built in 1880. Mildred lived here for 8 years in this house. She hung herself at the end of this hall.
Like I was talking about in my last video when I was talking about the movie Influencer, I'm just kind of getting tired of a lot of these influencers, social media, YouTuber, those kind of horror movies. We had just a bunch of them, especially since 2020. And I get it, it's an of this moment type of topic. And so it makes a lot of sense to make a horror movie like that. But unfortunately, a lot of them, kind of like found footage, have not been very good because it's a fairly inexpensive thing to make, just like found footage. But like the movie Influencer, there's a few that are really good and shouldn't be overlooked. And Deadstream is one right near the top. This movie is so much fun. It's funny at times without exactly feeling like a comedy. In so many ways, it reminds me of Evil Dead. And I'm not saying to compare this to Evil Dead or that it's as good or impactful like Evil Dead. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying there are elements about Evil Dead, the tone of it, the humor of it that remind me of this. Because it gets a little silly, it gets over the top, but never forgets that it's a horror movie and gets really grisly, creepy, and uncomfortable in a lot of scenes. It's also surprising and goes in a few different directions that definitely caught me off guard. But I'm not saying it's a game changer, but I am saying it's incredibly fun. So I think Deadstream is one of the very best at doing this social media, online influencer type of horror. And it's one that I highly, highly recommend. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, between making videos, going to see movies, editing, traveling when I can, doing all the things that it takes to do this channel, I'm not left with much time anymore, so I don't get a chance to game like I used to. But that's actually what led me to find my new favorite way to game, which is on my phone. And that's where Fishing Clash comes in. Because when Fishing Clash reached out to me to work together, I was genuinely excited. I was immediately hooked. Pun intended. This game is so good. The graphics are bright, colorful, and super crisp, which I love because my eyesight isn't exactly elite anymore. And the gameplay, it's the perfect mix of easy to learn and super satisfying. I was battling right away without having to sit through a million tutorials. You can compete against friends and players from all over the world in weekly events that are packed with prizes. And if you're like me and you enjoy to collect things, this game is addictive in the best way possible. There's a ton of cool gear, rare fish, achievements, you name it. So if you want to try it out, scan the QR code that's on the screen right now, or go into the top pinned comment, as well as in the video description, there's a link. Go to that link. But make sure you enter in the code GHOSTPIRATE to get a free gift with a $20 value. All right, I'm gonna go catch a monster fish or two between edits, and I'll see you guys in Fishing Clash.
Splinter, don't want to stick you.
Here.
It's gonna get in here! It's gonna kill it!
Splinter is a 2008 body horror movie. Directed by Toby Wilkins, it stars Shea Wingham, Paulo Constanzo, and Jill Wagner. Trapped in an isolated gas station by a parasite that transforms its still living victims into deadly hosts, a young couple and an escaped convict must find a way to work together to survive.
What was that?
Move away from the glass. It tracks us somehow.
This is such a badass little movie, and it is really flown under the radar. It isn't talked about nearly enough, especially if you're talking about indie movies, ones that have to do with body horror. Like, this is one of the more exciting and surprising ones at that. But I get it because it's not a big blockbuster kind of thing, so it didn't get in front of a lot of eyeballs. But I know that a lot of the hardcore horror fans have at least heard of this, but I still don't think enough people have checked this out or talk about it. And so every now and then I gotta bring it up on the channel because this movie is so gritty and grimy and uncomfortable. The way the body horror plays out, the different unique creepiness that it comes at you with is pretty unique in a lot of ways. And it is a pretty simple premise, so it's not something that has got all these complex layers and stuff like that. But the fact that it's so intense, such a no-biter, keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time, that's what makes this such a fun roller coaster ride. But for such an underrated little movie, this one packs a huge body horror punch. So if you have yet to see Splinter and you're a fan of body horror, make this the next thing that you watch. Frankenstein's Army is a 2013 found footage horror movie. Directed by Richard Rafforst, it stars Carell Roden, Joshua Sass, and Luke Newberry. In the dying days of World War II, a battalion of Russian soldiers is lured into a secret lab of a deranged scientist and forced to face off against an army of horrific flesh and metal war machines.
What is that? Don't touch it, don't touch it.
Okay, so if you're one of those out there that hears found footage and kind of just goes, skip, not interested, that's not my thing, you might want to hold on just a second, because this is not like any other found footage really I've seen. Because I'm not saying this has the hugest budget or anything like that, but this goes for it way more than almost any other found footage type of movie I can think of. Because it's not necessarily full of CGI or any of that, but it has a lot of practical effects and the costume designs and the different imaginative things that this movie does is so special. Unfortunately, it's really been a victim to the bad name. I mean, this has a very cheesy, campy type of title. And so I know, myself included, it just never was something that I figured was worth my time until enough people over the last few years bugged me and were like, hey, you should check this movie out. And so about a year or so ago, I did for the first time and was just blown away. Because yes, I am a fan of found footage, but I'm also really sick of found footage. And unless it's done really well at this point, I kind of just skip by them. But this one is truly unique and creative. Even the reason it's found footage makes sense. It just feels like it all naturally works and makes sense. And just like Splinter, talk about body horror. I mean, this movie has some really uncomfortable, gross, barbaric, just creepy ass shit that it throws at you throughout this entire movie. Every time you think you've seen, what they're gonna do, they continue to ramp it up and do something even more wild, weird, and just off-putting. But Frankenstein's Army is an absolute ride. So as long as you don't go into this and pick it apart and just enjoy it for what it is, I think you'll have an absolute blast. Kill List is a 2011 British psychological horror movie. Directed by Ben Wheatley, it stars Neil Maskell, Mayanna Buring, and Michael Smiley. 8 months after a disastrous job in Kiev left him mentally and physically scarred, an ex-soldier turned contract killer is pressured into taking a new assignment.
They're bad people. They should suffer.
I'm a pretty big fan of a lot of Ben Wheatley's work, but this might be my favorite of his. It's definitely the most surprising of any of his movies because this goes along feeling like it's going to be one way. But trust me when I say, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but this movie is not what it exactly appears. Like for the first probably half of it, it's going along one way and then it takes a turn and becomes pretty different and is very surprising and ultimately just goes off the deep end. It gets really dark and twisted and it really just not something I was expecting at all because it starts out being like a crime thriller. But trust me, you got to be patient with it because it does become a horror movie. but I don't want to ruin anything, so I'm not going to spoil it here and tell you what this movie is, because it's not what it appears. But like all of Ben Wheatley's movies, they're well directed, they're well shot, edited, all of that. Just his style of filmmaking, I really appreciate. There's like a kind of bleak, dark edge to all his stuff that just makes you feel off and like things are just not quite right. That's at least his smaller indie movies like this. I mean, of course, he's got a lot of these bigger movies that are not exactly the same, but when he's working on a budget for these indie kind of movies like this, these smaller films, these are my favorite type that he does. There's a lot of a psychological thriller element to it. Like the movie In the Earth is another one that he did that I really enjoy. So I think Kill List is a gritty, uncomfortable, disturbing movie that's definitely worth your time.
Jesus, what big teeth you have.
Company of Wolves is a 1984 British Gothic fantasy horror movie. Directed by Neil Jordan, it stars Angela Lansbury, David Warner, and Sarah Patterson. A teenage girl in a country manor falls asleep while reading a magazine and has a disturbing dream involving wolves prowling in the woods outside her window. So this is a very different one than what I normally talk about on this channel. I'm not a huge fantasy guy, but there's also not a ton of fantasy horror movies. But this has that gothic-y, creepy kind of feel to it. It's also just gorgeous. It's a beautiful movie. Just the artistry and the imagination that's on display in this is really cool. But on top of that, I'm a huge fan of werewolves, and this has some of the most badass werewolf scenes, really cool transformation stuff. I mean, if you're a fan of werewolves and have yet to see this, I think it's definitely worth checking out. But it's cool because of it having this fairy tale, dreamlike quality. Everything just feels not quite right, and it allows it to be really much more creative and stuff than if it was in a grounded reality state. But this isn't necessarily a movie that's gonna scare you or anything, but it does have more grit and gore and all that stuff than I expected. And I know this is a classic. A lot of people grew up with this movie. I didn't see it until just a few years ago when I was putting together some different werewolf videos that I've made. And a bunch of you guys recommended it, and so I finally checked it out. And I'm so glad I did. It ended up making into one of my top werewolf movies of all time list because, like I said, the imagination that's on display, the costume design, and the way the werewolves transformation is done and stuff, it really is one of the best werewolf element movies out there. And as someone that grew up with Murder, She Wrote, to see a younger Angela Lansbury in this just really brought back that nostalgic feel, especially because I have memories of watching Murder, She Wrote with my grandma. But if it's been a while since you've seen this, or if you've never seen Company of Wolves like I was up until just a couple years ago, it's absolutely one to check out.
There is nothing out there!
Your mind's looking for things to worry about.
The Wind is a 2018 Western horror movie, directed by Emma Tammy in her feature film debut. It stars Caitlin Gerard, Ashley Zuckerman, and Julia Goldani-Telles. A plainswoman faces the harshness and isolation of the untamed land in the western frontier of the late 1800s. So this is a very slow burn kind of movie. It really takes its time, but it leans into that dread. It leans into the isolation and harshness of this situation that this woman is in. And it really puts you into that environment, but you got to be in the right state of mind for it. You have to be in for that slow prodding type of way that this movie is presented in. But if you can get in the right headspace for this type of horror movie, this is one of the more effective ones, because I really found myself lost in this situation as someone who's dealt with loneliness, isolation, and depression and things like that a lot in my adult life. This movie really resonated for me. It's also really moody and atmospheric. The evil, the creepy qualities, the things like that that are in this just feel so full of atmosphere. and it just feels suffocating at times and overwhelming. But I think if you're a fan of that slow burn, artsy, dramatic kind of horror, movies like The Witch, then I think this one might be right up your alley.
Bury it in the earth. And join us in the skies.
Starry Eyes is a 2014 horror movie, written and directed by Kevin Kolsky. It stars Alex Esso, Amanda Fuller, and Noah Segan. A hopeful young starlet uncovers the sinister origins of the Hollywood elite and enters into a deadly agreement in exchange for fame and fortune.
Hello, Sarah. We'd like to see you again. And Sarah, this will be different.
I am a big fan of this movie. I talk about it probably at least once a year. I just love the way it's told, the way it's shot. It has this really greasy, grimy, gritty feel, and Alex Esso is just phenomenal in it. But I think a lot of people don't exactly get the message here, because whenever I talk about this, I always have a bunch of people talking about, yeah, that's what the Hollywood elite are like. That's what, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that they're not. But I think if that's all you come away with from this movie, I think you're kind of missing the point of it, because the movie in general is about giving into the devil's deal, so to speak. And it doesn't matter what career you're in. It doesn't matter what you're doing in your life. There will be that easy road that comes along, that opportunity that you could take that may be against your morals and principles and all those things, but it'll make the road easier, or at least you think that's what it'll be. And I'm not going to spoil this movie and talk about the directions that it ultimately goes, what happens at the end, or any of that. I'm just saying that there is a lot deeper message, underlying things that this movie's talking about than just, oh, beware of the Hollywood elite. But even if that's all you do come away with this movie feeling, that's fine too, because it's still an entertaining, creepy horror movie. But I think if for whatever reason you have yet to see Starry Eyes and you're into indie horror, a lot of the smaller horror movies I talk about, you really should add this one to your list. Excision is a 2012 horror movie, written and directed by Richard Bates Jr. It stars Annalyn McCord, Tracy Lords, and Malcolm McDowell. The story is about a disturbed, delusional high school student with aspirations of a career in medicine, and goes to extremes to earn the approval of her controlling mother and sister.
I'd accept full responsibility for all my actions, but let's face it, he gave me hormones.
This movie is fucking nuts. It's so weird, dark, uncomfortable. I've never seen it listed as a dark comedy, but I do think there's a lot of dark comedic elements about this, because it has this disturbing, funny quality where you shouldn't be laughing per se, but you do. And there's a lot of things in this that are super just messed up, but you can't help yourself. At least for me anyway, I could not help but bust out laughing. But it's really twisted. It's really dark. It's gory. It's just bizarre. It's really not like any other movie I can think of, which is why every now and then I gotta continue to praise this movie and recommend this movie, because I want all the really twisted horror fans out there to at least have seen this once. And it's not a movie that most mainstream horror fans are going to really be into. If you're looking for something scary, that's not going to be the case here. If you're someone that's more a fan of like the fast food level of horror, like the Insidious movies or the Conjuring universe, things like that, those are fun. I enjoy those. I'm not knocking those by any means. I'm just saying that's not the kind of movie that this is. This is the deep underbelly side. This is where horror goes to just be off-putting, creepy, unnerving. Fans of those kind of horror movies, that's what this movie's made for. Which is why, like, a lot of times I'm always talking about, I don't know why this doesn't have a wider audience or why more people don't talk about it. That's not the case here. I know 100% why. I know why this movie does not get a lot of praise. I know why the masses did not come for this movie, because it's just so disturbing, but absolutely a blast. So if everything I've said about it and the clips that I'm playing here have piqued your interest, it looks like something that might be interesting to you, do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch. Apollo 18 is a 2011 found footage sci-fi horror movie. Directed by Gonzalo Lopez Gallego, it stars Warren Christie, Ryan Robbins, and Lloyd Owen. Decades-old found footage from NASA's Apollo 18 mission shows 3 American astronauts who were sent on a secret expedition, revealing the true reasons the United States has never returned to the moon.
Houston, how does the motion sensor work?
Hear that? Yeah.
This is a fun one. Absolutely not one to pick apart. It really is a popcorn kind of horror movie. It's another found footage movie though that does things in a different way because the entire thing is shot like you're on this expedition, like you're the actual cameraman on the space shuttle filming everything. And so it's really easy to get lost into this and feel like you're watching some real lost footage. And they do a really good job of making it feel real, as in the technology, the costume design, all that stuff. It feels period accurate and feels pretty close to the real thing. But ultimately, this gets into a fun sci-fi horror direction. But like I said, this is just a fun one, not one to overthink or pick apart or overly scrutinize. But if you just go into it and relax and enjoy it for what it is, I think you really could have a good time with it.
I'm just gonna have to solve this problem myself.
I'm not leaving till you give me a kidney.
12-Hour Shift is a 2020 black comedy horror movie. Written and directed by Brea Grant, it stars Angela Bettis, Kit Williamson, and David Arquette. Bodies start to pile up when a drug user nurse and her cousin try to find a replacement kidney for an organ trafficker.
Is this a joke?
You lost thousands of dollars worth of organs.
If I don't bring him a kidney, I'm dead.
This movie's wild. It's really zany, different, unique. It doesn't feel really like anything else. Just the tone of it, the comedy that's on display. It has this off-putting, uncomfortable, little gross kind of feel to the whole thing. It feels grimy and gritty. And the cast is fantastic in this, especially Angela Bettis. She just is amazing in this role. I also really enjoy David Arquette in this. He's just the perfect actor to be in this weird, zany kind of movie. I'm also a big fan of the work Brea Grant does, usually in front of the camera, but this is a movie that she wrote and directed, and I just think she has such a bright future at making films. Like, yeah, she's amazing in front of the camera, and I love her in a lot of the things I've seen her do, but to see her making movies, this is where I feel like she truly belongs and has an extremely bright future. But it goes in so many weird, wild, strange directions, definitely keeps you guessing throughout. And I think it's a perfect pick for this Saturday night. So do yourself a favor this weekend, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button, and remember guys, horror can be fun! And once again, I want to give a huge thank you to Fishing Clash for sponsoring today's video. And I'll see you guys next time!